Hey everybody, this is So Many Sequels, your book club for movies. I'm Josh.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm David.
Welcome to the final episode of Party Like It's 1999 Vember. We're talking about our fan-voted movie of the week or month, which is Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. We have never done an Austin Powers movie. This is the first time for us. No, we've all seen them, obviously. I say obviously. Maybe some haven't, but we all have. And we had talked about doing it before. I know we have, as a series. And we never quite could get ourselves to do it. I think because none of us wanted to. And so
Correct.
the fans had to step in this time and convince us to watch it. If you saw our weekly update a few days ago, Austin Powers won by one vote. So this was a close race to the finish, and so here we are, going to talk about Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Let's get into it. First with a little plot synopsis here from Letterboxd. First he fought for the crown, now he's fighting for the family jewels. When diabolical genius Dr. Evil travels back in time to steal super spy Austin Powers' Mojo, Austin must return to the swinging 60s himself with the help of American agent Felicity Shagwell to stop the dastardly plan. Once there, Austin faces off against Dr. Evil's army of minions to try to save the world in his own unbelievably groovy way. Austin Powers came out in 1999. David, what was the box office for this big sequel?
Well, it was very, very good. First off, I have this wrong here in my notes, but Austin Powers and the Spy Who Shagged Me came out the weekend of June 11th, 1999, opening number one and bringing in $54.9 million. That's the equivalent of a $104 million open today. This would be one of the top movies of 2024. In terms of inflation adjustment. This is the movie that knocked The Phantom Menace out of the number one spot, which is very appropriate because I forgot that this movie opens with a Star Wars-esque crawl. And it actually makes some of the other Star Wars references make a little bit more sense now that I consider that it would be opening just a few weeks after Star Wars came out. Its U.S. run was actually quite well. It made $206 million in the U.S., which is the equivalent of about a $390 million movie today. It brought in $106.3 overseas for a worldwide total of $312.3 million. All of that on an estimated budget of about $35 million. So it did about 9 times its production budget.
All of that
marketing looked
went
like
into the
then.
fat bastard makeup.
A good amount, some of it at least. And this would end up finishing as the number 4 movie of 1999, just behind Toy Story 2, The Sixth Sense, and Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. It finished way above The Matrix. Can you imagine? I mean, sequel aside, can you imagine a just pure comedy movie being in the top 5 these days? I can't even imagine one in the top 10.
I miss it.
I do too.
Can we laugh again? Can we laugh more, please?
I think we're close. I think we're living in a world where we're close to being because we gotta laugh.
We gotta laugh. It can't all be serious franchise sequels and crap. We need some laughter.
One of the things we did with our poll was we picked the top comedians and Tim Allen, and we put their movies together and said, hey, tell us which one you want to see. And Mike Myers was a big star in the late 90s to the early 2000s. Was. So, he had and this character was hilarious. People loved it at the time, so it did really well. Now, I will say that this is the highest performing of the Powers movies. The first movie, while it did really well, this just blew it out of the water. The third movie in the franchise also did about the same. It had maybe like a 10% drop from The Spy Who Shagged Me, but this was a consistently successful comedy franchise. And I think the only thing that stopped it was a combination of poor critical reception for the second and third movie, and I think just people feeling the gimmick had worn thin.
Well, a spoof can only last so long, I think.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to start but at the beginning, I suppose. I feel like... so Garrett and I watched this together last night as of recording. I know Didn't intend to not invite you, David.
No
but
invite for
we
me.
figured you'd be busy.
Right.
Right.
This is awkward.
So we got to watch it together, which I think helped with the funny, made it a little easier to enjoy. I'll start with my part. I really thought I was gonna not enjoy it, and I did for a while. It did hit a point where it started to grate on me, and I was like, even at an hour and 34 minutes, this is really testing the limits of what this story can hold up. And it kind of just, this sounds like a weird critique, but it like kind of more obviously just turns into a series of bits towards the end, just like bit after bit instead of moving the story along. If I can critique the storytelling in an Austin Powers movie, it would be that. But man, the first 45 minutes at least is funny still. Like, something about what Mike Myers does with that character. He's so shameless. He's so just like weirdly joyful. You know what I mean? He's just like, oh yeah, you're happy when Austin Powers walks in the room. He's just like full of. It's the mojo, man. He's got so much mojo that he's just still really funny to watch. Like, I hate it. I hate how much I laughed at the opening naked scene where he's beat all of his, his bits are being hidden by various things. That's stupid, but it's funny. The various yellings out of phallic objects when the rockets launch.
Right.
Right up my alley, unfortunately. and then, great supporting cast. I love seeing Rob Lowe as the young number 2. Heather Graham is great as Felicity Shagwell in this one, as the Powers girl. Love Vern Troyer as Mini-Me. Iconic. So many ways. But yeah, it does start to turn into bits. But
Any thoughts on Seth Green as Scott Evil?
Oh, thoughts on Seth Green? I'll save it for later when we get past our first thoughts. Gary, what did you think watching it?
With Josh.
With me?
My concern was very similar, that it was I said there's only 2 ways it can go. It's either going to be bad or it has circled back to being funny.
Yeah.
And so I agree that it has circled back to being funny. And I think that the key is that we didn't do it as a franchise. I don't think that they would have lasted well. I think that the fact that the fans picked this one, I think that it wasn't the second one in the watching of the whole franchise. I think that just diving in and letting your brain remember how big Austin Powers was. Because Austin Powers as a pop culture thing still exists in slogans and phrases amongst people our age.
We were both able to quote things that we didn't know how we could really quote.
Correct. And it's because we have forgotten how huge Austin Powers is and was. And one of the things that stands out to me is not only do I own the first one, I own the second one and the third one because I purposely bought them in a series on DVD. These were movies that I had predominantly on my bookshelf for people to see, that I would watch when you would pull DVDs down and watch them. So these are just things, and then it's been sitting on like a bookshelf for 20 years, not having been watched, because there was a time where I did want to watch it, and I turned it on and I went, this is really, really stupid. Why did I ever think this was funny? This is awful and really, really dumb. And that was the last impression that I had. And for a long time, I was like, Austin Powers can just live in my memories. I will randomly quote Dr. Evil when the time arises. I will randomly do this and think of all of the fun. And that has how it has been. And so this is the first time, and I can't even tell you how long. And this was the one that I liked the most. You talked about how the first one was kind of a cult hit. The first one was kind of a cult hit, and it shot into like crazy fun. And so people were excited for this one, and they were so ready for it, and it just blew up. And then it kind of was like, okay, well, this is a little bit of the same thing as that first one. And the third one was a little bit of the same thing as the second one, which is the same thing as the first one. And so I do think that if you're going to watch these, just pick one, sit down, and enjoy, and then wait 5 years and do it again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What was your...
David, you?
All right, so cards on the table. I promise that I will not do an Austin Powers impression for the course of the podcast. I make no such promises about Dr. Evil. I still find this, just like you guys, I still found this to be very funny. The nostalgia wins out here. I was laughing and quoting along way more than I thought I would. And I was still laughing at some of my favorite bits. I do stand by the opinion that I think the first one is a better all-around film. I think that the satire of the Bond and spy genre is better there. I think that it has a more coherent and complete story. It's not just a series of bits. I think that's a better movie. This still is very funny, though, because it is just letting Mike Myers essentially do what he does best, which is just play these absurd characters and to throw in his little inserts into bits, you know? There's a classic who cares mentality, though, in this movie. Like, the movie literally tells you, look, this is a movie, right? Just enjoy the characters, enjoy the loosely constructed plot that just allows us to get to bits. Allows us to get to Dr. Evil singing Just the Two of Us. Allows us to have Austin Powers drink Fat Bastard's poop, right? Like, there's not a lot of internal logic here. So it's hard to criticize that because, like, they admit in the movie they don't care. There's a great bit where Austin Powers is driving and he says,
there is.
You know, it's amazing how England looks in no way like Southern California when clearly they're driving through Southern California hills. It's hard to, like, really pin that on it too much. So all you're left to look at and to criticize.
Time machine set up, and then moments later, Basil told me not to worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Just enjoy yourself. So at that point, all you're left to criticize or to look at is the humor. And I think, generally speaking, a lot of the humor still works. Now, not all of it. A lot of the 99 humor is not going to hold up for a 14-year-old today to watch. The Jerry Springer element's probably not relatable. Some of the pop culture references are very dated. But if you're in your 30s, it's still going to work for you. It's going to bring you back to that time. It's a time travel movie. The rest is pretty immature. It's pretty crass. Hey, buddy. That's going to vary by person. If you're into crass humor, you'll like it. If you're not, you're not going to like it. But I had fun.
And I also think it depends on what kind of crass you like, because I enjoyed, I would say, most of this movie. And I would say not at least into the 45-minute mark, right? And then it gets tired, and then it gets a little hard to kind of engage with. But Fat Bastard did not hold up.
No.
I would say almost 0% of Fat Bastard was funny.
Man, he wasn't funny.
It just wasn't funny. Like, I don't know. It wasn't funny. They didn't do a good job to make him funny. They relied on stereotypes and tropes in a negative way.
That's true.
And it just wasn't smart. It wasn't clever. It was the laziest part of what they did. And the whole second half was pretty lazy.
Yeah, no, for me, it really dips off once, I guess pretty much once Austin kind of gets to the island and they go to space. You know, like that's where I'm kind of like, I'm tired of it at this point. But yeah, no, it's immature and it's very crass. And for a lot of people, that's not going to work overall. I did kind of note.
And I would say that I would even say that Fat Bastard himself wasn't even crass. It truly felt like they were making fun of fat people.
Oh,
like they were making.
But the joke was he was fat, not that he was crass.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
No,
it was like it wasn't cleverly done. It was meanly done, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference between Dr. Evil being able to stand up and be a funny character in 2024 versus how you look at Fat Bastard, and like even all of the little different side characters that they have over the course of their pretty racist like side character stuff, and that goes to Bond, that goes to Austin Powers. It extends beyond just that. It was just a time period, but like this one in particular just really was like, yeah, I've seen you do better.
No, but on his own, there's a lot of crass, weird humor with him because he talks about I've got a turtle poking out and all that stuff, and it's just all okay, all right. It's just more, I think people expect a lot of this, sort of the sexual innuendo, but then you get into a lot of like bathroom humor. That's it's gross. And Fat Bastard as a character is just presented as being gross, and him being this huge overweight man is there for you to laugh at. But I agree. I think Dr. Evil does hold up fairly well in terms of the humor he brings to this.
Because he lets himself be silly. He is an evil doctor, but man, he is dramatic in a fun and kind of flamboyant way that, again, he raps about it in this one with Mini-Me, where he wants to be able to feel his feelings. He is an evil doctor who has big feelings, and he does honestly a good job of expressing them.
Yeah.
He is communicative. He tries to help understand. He tries to communicate with Scott. I think Scott is honestly most of the time in the right, but whether it's coming down to like, why are you a weird father, or why do you never kill Austin when you get a chance? Both of them, he's got points.
Yeah, Scott asks the questions that I think like a normal audience member would. You
of course.
like, I mean, we talked about, or you and I, Garrett, talked about the scene with Will Ferrell's character Mustafa. They hand-to-hand combat with a gun. Nobody shoots each other, despite the fact that they all have guns. It's just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's such a... I had forgotten as a kid that was Will Ferrell in that role, but he's actually in the first Austin Powers too in that same role, even though it's a short bit there. But
we were shocked to find Jennifer Coolidge in the final.
Yes.
There are a lot of people in that little final bit. Obviously you have Woody Harrelson and Willie Nelson. Jeff, I think it's Jeff. Is it Jeff Garland? Is that his name? He was on the Goldbergs.
I don't know. They're all people I did not know when I was 10. So.
Right, David Koechner. We were talking about Koechner the other week, weren't we? He was one of the guys in that rundown too.
Yeah, the fun part is figuring out which ones are cameos and which ones are celebrities who are not famous yet.
Yeah,
you're right.
Let's talk about Miss Felicity Shagwell taking over for Elizabeth Hurley and Vanessa Kingsley, if I remember correctly. His love interest in the first one.
Kensington, yes.
Kensington, thank you. This one was the one that I really liked growing up. And truthfully, if you want to hear it from a 10-year-old perspective, it was the massive crush that I had on Heather Graham at the time. That was also a helping part of this movie. I find her funny. I find her attractive. I find her just really captivating and charming to work with Austin Powers. Like, she's got a level of confidence that puts him on his back foot because he's also so confident, and he's not used to the woman being able to take the lead and take the charge, and he likes it. And that their dynamic is really funny. And so I think that she really did a great job in this.
Elizabeth Hurley couldn't end up working on the project. I guess I was trying to read. There's actually not a lot of information about the production, but what I did find was Myers wanted her to come back, but she was tied up with a bunch of other films she was doing that year, and she really couldn't do it. And so he was like, you know what, that kind of works out because in the Bond movies, there's always a new woman. So they found a way around that, and then she got a little time later, so they filmed that opening sequence where she turns out to be a fembot. They filmed all that because she had just enough time to come in and shoot something like that. So it gave there a little continuity. It's kind of hard to think about continuity with these movies, but they gave a little bit between the end of the first one and this one. But yeah, I like Heather Graham in this too. She's very fun in this. She's very charismatic. I like Heather Graham in almost everything she's ever been in. So she's fantastic.
Yeah, no disagreements there. She's of the three, I think Felicity Shagwell is probably my favorite of the Powers girls. Just from a character perspective, I mean, they're all great. They all bring something great to the role, but this movie just probably works the best of all three for a lot of reasons, and I think the chemistry between them is better because what I really like with Heather Graham is how Felicity is very like, I got a job to do, and so like she sleeps with Fat Bastard, and then we go into this whole thing where Austin is just a big baby about it, and she's just like, it's 11 kind of thing. She just has a totally different kind of like work style than Austin, and it's fun to see that dynamic play out where he's
and he's lost his
she's
mojo.
a little more serious. Yeah.
So he's kind of like a little bit more intimidated than he might have otherwise been.
Right.
It makes for a slightly different character dynamic than you have in the first Austin Powers, where he's really trying to bring down Elizabeth Hurley's character to kind of like live a little, and now he's got a woman who already knows how to live a little. So it's kind of a different dynamic in terms of that character. So you do get some change between this and say the first one in my memory, but a lot of it and we can talk about. I think we've already kind of talked about this. A lot of this does just kind of devolve to just kind of sight gags and stuff that's honestly stuff that is funny, but it doesn't really have much. I don't know. It doesn't have any mojo.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it does. It loses its mojo once everybody's on the volcano island. I feel like that's where it kind of really starts to fall apart. You get the silhouetted sex innuendo tent scene again for round 2, and it's like, it's okay. I've seen this before. It's not that funny. Did they not do it in the first one?
No,
I thought they did something
this is where they introduced
similar.
This bit. They do a similar bit in the third one with Austin and Mini-Me, but I think that was new to this one.
And do you guys have any like good bits that you do find funny throughout this movie? For me, I appreciate no matter which time frame he's in, Dr. Evil has no idea how to make the correct reference. He is always making the wrong reference, whether it's like, why get trillions when we could make billions? And then he goes back in time and he's making Jerry Maguire references. Like, he just gets it wrong no matter where. And it is so funny because he's so committed to every single one. And he just keeps adding to it.
And Scott just heckling him from the side is always great. Where he's like Jerry Maguire hasn't come out yet, numbnuts, and he says I like when he tells it's the Alan Parsons Project, right? And he goes, "Why do you name the next one? Operation Wang Chung." It's hilarious with great work, Seth Green on the side. I have a couple favorite lines that I quote quite often when he's talking about the mojo. He goes, "I'm going to steal Austin Powers' mojo," right? And he does they ask him what it is, and he goes, "It's the life force, the essence, the libido, the right stuff." And my favorite, I say this to Nikki all the time, it has what the French might call a certain, I don't know what.
I don't know what.
And I love that. But anyway, I also like when he says, "Austin Powers is the snake to my mongoose, or the mongoose to my snake." It's either way. I don't know animals. That's one. That's one of my favorites. I don't know animals. The swivel chair, to this day, is like the thing that cracks me up the most. Is when he's sitting, he goes, "I need a young priest and an old priest." He's just spinning around. That still cracks me up, and it always will. There was a scene early on that really cracked me up with Austin that I had forgotten about, where Ivana, I'll avoid saying her last name, but she's played by Kristen Johnson. She rips his shirt open and she sees all the hair, and she says, "Oh, you are hairy like an animal." And Austin says, "Grr, baby, very grr." I'd forgotten about very grr. I remembered very ouch, but I'd forgotten about very grr. I was like, you could just, Austin works in all scenarios.
I love that Austin always has a well-placed Burt Bacharach. That's a favorite bit of mine. This time with an added Elvis Costello. Everything you guys see is also great. The rocket ship, and then the cuts to all the people seeing it and yelling out a term.
Johnson's.
Yeah. That Private. Is, again, just unfortunately funny to me.
You're not alone. I read that it was so funny in test screenings that they went back and made another scene for it. That's why you get the second scene later where they do it again.
Interesting.
It is funny.
So,
I also, or go.
Oh, no, please do, because I was going to change the subject.
I was going to say, the last one that I used to, I had this moment of, man, I used to say that so much, and sometimes you just don't say things anymore. And for me, that was, oh, look at me, I'm shaking my little space boots. I used to say that all the freaking time, and now nothing. So that was a moment of like, wow.
There was also, but I do want to, okay, last one. I do genuinely like Dr. Evil singing Just the Two of Us with Mini-Me. That is still a very funny thing. I almost quoted the whole song as it was playing, like, wanted Scott to run the family, be evil, just like me. And he said, what does he say? Go on Oprah and Maya Angelou. Like that part cracks me up still. So The movie, it does, like we said, movie's still very funny at times.
Yeah, and I think what is very interesting about this one is that, we've talked about a lot of the quotable moments from it, but I think some of these quotable moments have even broken out of the Austin Powers sphere to where you don't have to have seen it to know it. And I'm curious what you guys think might be the iconic catchphrase from this movie. And I'm going to start with mine, which I think, despite me not liking this character, is "Get in my belly."
Oh, that was something I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I think that one has transcended Austin Powers. But I think there's a lot. I think "How about no" is also a lot.
How about no?
There's a lot of it in there.
I don't know if Zip It was big before this, but people still do Zip It from time to time. How about no? And they continue that on later in the Dutch one. I was mad at myself. I was gonna mention this. My head was dominated for a long time by Ludacris's number one spot, which samples the music from Austin Powers, and he makes a ton of Austin Powers references. Do you guys remember this song?
No.
Number one spot by Ludacris. Oh my gosh, you're gonna have to listen to it. If we make a video, if we make a social video out of it, snip it in right here. Ludacris's number one spot was such a funny song. It used the music from Austin Powers. He makes a ton of Austin Powers references in it. It's a hilariously fun song. He yells, "Get in my belly" at one point, and so that was when you said that. It immediately jumped into my head as the Ludacris song. But yeah, that groovy baby. I mean, that really kind of originates more with the other one, but it continues on here.
This isn't a catchphrase, but one just fun thing I read that kind of blew my mind on the old Wikipedia, which is always true. But for real, though, apparently this movie helped normalize the use of the word shag in American and UK culture. Like, there were posters that were censored where they would censor the A in shag because it was not. People were like, that's not appropriate. But the movie made it part of the nomenclature, I guess. And now, because that blew both of our minds. I was like, there's no way I would ever consider shag to be a bad word. In fact, I think it's kind of cringy.
Well, I think that's the thing is I think that, like, in terms of like Americanized lingo, this would be like if the movie was called The Spy Who Boned Me or something like that. Like, it was kind of a crass way to refer to it, and this normalized it a little bit and just enough to, I guess, be a little bit more passable. It didn't have quite the same connotation here in America that it did in England, but I'm sure people could figure out what it was for. But yeah, that's very interesting. I can't think of many movies that normalized sexual euphemism,
especially a random weird one like that.
The other thing that I want to talk about real quick was just the soundtrack in general, the score, both memorable, iconic, the theme, that stuff it gets stuck in my head sometimes. You get some really great movies or songs of the 60s combined with some really great covers from Dr. Evil, like you mentioned, David. And he does that in the third one, too. I got to hype that up because I really enjoy that. So and one of the songs, whenever he goes back in time, I don't remember the name of it, but was also the opening to like MLB The Show in like 1998. And so that song just lived in my early phases. So the score in this one I also thought was very well executed.
Yeah, no, it's great, and you got, you got everybody from Madonna, The Who, you got Lenny Kravitz in here, you got Melanie B with Word Up, Green Day's in here, The Flaming Lips, like it's a pretty great soundtrack, and it actually performed really well on the charts, I believe, back in '99. So I do think also it's very funny that this movie had I'm a Believer by the Monkees in it, and like one-ish year later Shrek would come out, which also had I'm a Believer in it, also had Mike Myers. That was very funny to me.
And we have that other thing with Mystery Men and Smash Mouth and Shrek.
Smash Mouth making a B-plot appearance in 1999
Shrek's
movies.
doing something.
10 Things having 1 week as well as American Pie. True. There was these songs were getting around back then.
True.
Wow.
All right, well, let's move on to our final thoughts here as we wrap up the show. I enjoy it for what it is. I do think it's probably something that if you don't have a nostalgic tie to it in any way, I'm not sure if you would like it. Like, if you're like a young person who just wasn't around for it and you're like, I'm going to try Austin Powers. I don't know, because there's a certain something you have to just like you had to be there. I think maybe.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know about that. But overall, I was surprised by how much I still enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. It's probably the highest I could possibly go.
Yeah, similarly, I still find it very funny. The gags do wear thin by the end of the film, even for me, though. If you have a friend to watch it with, I think this is going to be more enjoyable. You guys watch together. I watched it with my wife. I think if I'd watched it by myself, I probably would have been more nitpicky. But I watched it with Nikki, and we laughed quite a few times. I think with a friend, this is better. With an audience, this is probably better. So I consulted my rating scale, and I'm going to go with 3.5 because that's where I have the terminology for enjoyable. I still enjoyed myself, even if it wasn't like an overall perfect experience. So I'm going to go 3.5.
All right.
Nice. I'm going to weirdly split the difference because sometimes movies, they need to be off a letterboxed scale, right?
Oh.
And so I'm going to rate this movie as a 3. So that is where I will have it. But I think that realistically, I can't allow it to be a 3.5, but I am going to allow a little nostalgia, a little fun in there, and I will settle for our ranking of a 3.25.
Just a little bit in between. Well, all right. Well, let's see what Letterboxd thought, because I will be fascinated to find out.
Well, let's go ahead. I've got some of the most popular reviews pulled up here already. This 3.5 star from Liam says, Mike Myers could do James Bond, but Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig could never do Fat Bastard.
Fat Bastard specifically.
Okay.
I was going to say Daniel Craig might be able to do Austin Powers.
5 stars. Scott Evil is the love of my life. 3.5 stars. Heather Graham is no match for the raw sexual power of Mike Myers in a swimsuit. And then finally, 3 stars. Congratulations to Jeff Bezos for riding his penis-shaped rocket into space, just like his hero, Dr. Evil.
Evil, yeah.
Yay.
There's a little current affairs for you.
Yeah.
It's because his rocket
someone
looks
watched
like
it
a
recently.
phallic. Yeah. We get that?
We saw that.
We
We all saw it.
Okay.
We all were making those bits. Privates.
So, based on that, what do we think? Who? And I don't know who goes first.
So I did an audit of the scores, and some numbers changed.
Oh.
Garrett and I are actually tied at 20.
Thank God.
Josh has 17. I had prescribed Josh a win in Office Space, but Garrett had actually won that episode. So, Josh, you are up first. You are 3 behind Garrett and I as we head towards the last game before So Many Santas.
Okay, well, I am going to guess. I feel like Letterboxd is going to also split our difference somewhere, so I'm going to pick a 3.2.
Okay.
How do you want to do this, David?
Well, Garrett, you won the last game, the most recent game. So I guess I'll go.
Okay.
I will shoot lower and go with 3. I'm going to go 3.1.
Ooh. See, I think that people are going to be where you all are. I think they were going to be like surprised that they like it. I think this is the one that people like the most. So I'm going to overshoot and I'm going to go with a 3.4.
Okay. All right. That leaves us room for Josh, you said 3-2. That leaves us, okay, so we will need a tiebreaker potential. So we'll probably just do the first Austin Powers for tiebreaker here.
Okay, well, we need a tiebreaker because it's 3.3.
3.3. All right, hang on. I've already got Letterboxd pulled up.
Perfect.
So
for Austin Powers 1, I'm going to guess it's got to be worse, right? I don't know how much more worse though. 2.9.
You think it's gonna be worse?
See, I think that
Austin
one's gonna
Powers
be
1 is gonna be worse than the first.
I
think it's gonna
personally
be
think it's
better.
worse, but
First Austin Powers is the best one.
I'm gonna raise it. No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think most people think that 3.5 is probably where I think that one lands.
All right. Well, no gilding the lily here. Garrett, you are the winner because it's a 3.4 because most people rightfully know that Austin Powers 1 is the better movie.
See, and this is why America's in the state it's in. No.
The first one is better. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah,
Better overall movie.
It's a good
funnier.
movie.
No, not funnier.
But well, it's pretty funny. I mean, is it as gag ridden? No, because it has actual character in it. All right, Garrett wins. Anyway.
I agree with that.
Austin
Well, that puts Garrett in.
Does that mean I'm in the lead?
Garrett's in the
overall?
lead.
Am I?
Garrett has 21. I have 20. Josh has 17. We're going into So Many Santas. Only 3 episodes left in the year, I believe, is what that means. 3
or 4.
3 more opportunities.
We make the rules.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for us on this episode of So Many Sequels. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search So Many Sequels there. Or in your favorite podcasting app, whichever way you like to watch the show. You can also go to our website, somanysequels.com, where we've got links to our socials and our past episodes are all listed there for you to listen to whenever you want. So go check that out, somanysequels.com. We'll be back very soon for another news update episode, but our next series is So Many Santas, so get those jingle
Start
bells
thinking
out.
about your holiday movies that you want us to watch.
Start thinking. Let us know on Instagram if you've already got one in mind. We'd love to hear it. We'll see you guys very soon for Christmas. What?